Hey there! Welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today it's a big one. We're finally talking about the newest album from Open Mike Eagle, Neighborhood Gods Unlimited. Let me establish this. I find it profoundly frustrating that I'm more lukewarm than hot on Open Mike Eagle in the 2020s, especially in comparison with the 2010s. Mostly because between the streams and podcasts and commentary, he's an incredibly likable and witty presence online. We're all better for it, trail mix and all. But the music just hasn't often stuck as sharply, and I've struggled to pin down why. Some of that might be his new frequent collaborator child actors, shuddering sample flips that just hit less often for me, but some of it feels a little bit more insular and knotted. Music that he knows his friends will love and appreciate, but might have a slightly smaller outside appeal, or feel a little bit less conceptual until you get real deep in the weeds. Now, from all the buzz going in, this looked like it was splitting the difference. A higher concept idea of a micro-budget TV station that can only afford to broadcast an hour a day, and thus picks up all the texture one might expect from such an outlet, with the album art as a deliberate callback to Component System with the Auto Reverse from 2022, one of my favorite albums of that year. And Open Mike Eagle is still one of my favorite rappers working today. I wanted to give this a proper deep dive, take my time, and thus, well, I do have a lot to say, but getting to an actual concrete opinion has been unsurprisingly difficult. Mostly because this is an album that might seem singular in its concept and theme until you, well, start tugging on every extraneous thread. Some of which prompt comparisons that might not be that flattering, almost certainly intentional from him in that, and some of which, well, really cut close to home for me, and I want to give him all the high praise he's deserving for that. Because if this winds up among the best albums of 2025, it should not be a surprise. But again, let's start with that concept and how it immediately affects the mood and presentation of these rather fragmented but mostly self-contained songs. The deliberately weathered and nostalgic atmosphere where old equipment is struggling to stay afloat. The more, let's call, outlandish advertisements for wonder drugs and weird paraphernalia that wouldn't get traction outside of such an environment. And amidst the voice of someone telling deeply personal or disquieting stories, where you hit with both the lingering thought that they probably should be getting more bandwidth for their talent, but also might be a little terrified of what might come with such attention. And if they've had that attention in the past, they're well aware of what is required if you're looking to sell it. In another callback to such outlets, the history feels baked in. Not only is it called Dark Comedy TV, in a reference to his landmark 2014 album, there are multiple tracks here with explicit callbacks to previous records. Like Contraband, the plug has bags of me with the mournful guitar from Kenny Siegel, looping back in towards one of my favorite songs of his and Very Much Money, Ice King Dream, where like his 2020's output, it's not so much leaning on that insularity, but with the quiet hope that you might go digging and pick up the reference points in history if you can. And this is where we reach the first main theme of the album. Fragmentation, not just through the echoing crash of breaking glass that peppers the project, nor the mournful moment of one's cell phone getting destroyed on the dreary twang of "okay, but I'm the phone" screen, highlighting not just the accidental loss of one's mode of communication, again on accident, but also songs and ideas that could have translated to success, but he might not be able to rebuild them. But also that quiet reality that in creating and selling art that is so deeply personal, you gotta break off a piece of yourself in order to detach enough to make, polish, and perform it. There's always been that workaday commentary on consumerism and the average life of your underground rapper across all of his work. And it shows up early on the bladed shutter of me and Aquil stealing stuff from work. We're at a shoe store where he's working, he grabs a pair of Timbs instead of the Mephistos. But right from the jump, Open Mike Eagle shows the deeply flawed systems and ragged humanity within that retail environment that's trying to thrive within. Observing that none of this has ever been that good at anything beyond wearing down one's humanity. By making art of it, he's just making use of some of that fragmentation. of the trauma. I've also seen a lot of commentary on how very online all of this is. Believe me, we'll get into that. But I'm also not sure I fully agree. These are human experiences, and Open Mike Eagle is right to highlight the very analog systems and people who can just be as wrong-headed everywhere they are wrong, but also where they can be deceptively close to being onto something, which starts in the powerful juxtaposition of the sandy and soulful swell of Woke Up Knowing Everything opening theme, which highlights conspiracy on the first verse, but by the second places it alongside systemic analysis of the American project. And how close are they? Why is only one of them granted the pulpit? And yes, I'm being intentionally ambiguous surrounding which I am talking about. The juxtaposition is the point. If there is something where the internet comes into sharper focus, it's into how all of the information is everywhere, all at once. And if you're a content creator with much of a budget, those metatextual themes of fragmentation to make art, where it's all sprayed against the wall, often right next to each other, it's not that far removed from a micro-budget TV station, you know, your YouTube, where I can reference this album, the Freelancer arc on the now defunct Rooster Teeth's Red vs. Blue, and sports creator Tom Grossi's Coach series, and highlight stark similarities not just in themes, but execution and emotional resonance. Hell, I've been doing it for years now, over a decade. Or do I need to link back to my video essay on Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, Push the Sky Away, and metatext? Or just say memory is the key, and it could well speak to everything I just referenced. And what all these understand is what this experience does to someone. When you have such fragmentation, not only do you become acutely aware of when the camera's off, but in also trying to sell it just how much your market is, especially if you've captured the zeitgeist for a time, but a time doesn't account for rent. And as Relentless Hands and Feet identifies against its quaking scratch, still not the biggest child actor fan, but he arguably delivers some of his most refined grooves here, even if some of the melodies on the back half of the album hit that glassy, uncanny valley for me. Well, I got a bad habit of breathing, and in a city trying to get rid of you, I pray to my old pain, and it came too. The trauma that comes with revisiting art made amidst pain to try to process it, then perform it again. Mirror Pieces in a leather-bound briefcase also captures this alongside the fluttery drums and marimba, and a really nice Video Dave verse. Also shout out to how sharp the fellow previous Industries member Still Rift was on It Almost Broke My Nuclear Accumbens on the reference to Crisis on Infinite Earths, the 1986 DC comic, where the multiverse collapsed inwards by DC editorial to simplify things from the Anti-Monitor, and, well, if you're a comics fan, you already know how that turned out. But that's the other thing. I've talked a lot about artist and metatext, but art's the medium of the conversation, and especially if you're a creator online, the audience becomes as much of a factor. And to say this is a struggle is underselling, or should I say, no-selling it. One of the most upbeat and catchy tracks on the album is My Coworker Clark Kent's Secret Black Box, writing from the perspective of a very annoyed colleague of Clark Kent, aka Superman at the Daily Planet, who's plainly annoyed at all the hubbub, but then the song shifts. And Open Mike Eagle puts himself in the place of Superman and then gets denigrated in the same way. Now, there are layers to noting the lack of solidarity among workers and writers, especially in media, but also the paratext of Open Mike Eagle's Brick Body Kids Still Daydream from 2017, already with a similar airy expanse in the production, but also reference on the dusty bass of Michigan J. Wonder, where every vocal punch in there captures the voices where you're talking to yourself, but you also tap into the resonance of the black kid who found a superhero to live amidst the projects, embodying that land in the buildings, even if you're left knowing that it was never yours. See how Superman is rightly called the immigrant story, and all those connections, they bear fruit. And by the next track, with the quietly upbeat, breathy knock from Nolan the Ninja, you might find solace in putting all the pieces together, that you figured it out, even being invited into the community that thinks they know you and your imperfect whole. But that song's called Rejoinder, burning the last puzzle piece. Because we're human. We never fully coalesce. Now this is where I'm going to sketch a direct parallel to Black Hole Superette by Aesop Rock that dropped earlier this year, and Open Mike Eagle is on it, one of the better songs on it too, and that album explorations of the unquantifiable, the qualitative. See also Relentless Hands and Feet for highlighting a certain creative magic, but Aesop Rock feels nimbler and skating across the weird. Open Mike Eagle is more personally introspective and can feel nearly paralyzed for it. You hear that in his delivery, especially when you did get a little bigger for a time. It might not have lasted the way you thought, and that can fracture your relationships to community, make you feel all the more isolated. And the album ends on unlimited skull voices, one of the darkest moments in his catalog since My Auntie's Building, because against the distant creaks of electric guitar and the ponderous drums and the shudders of delay, he can't just shut off all the noise and discourse around him. He tried to get rid of them, and even if they're complementary, it becomes his own sort of panopticon, because in this capitalist world, when you haven't quite made it, or even if you have, the artist is still a slave to his shit, and his greatest fear is the realization he has to do it again. Now that's a reference to a hip-hop podcast, and I know he knows because he was going to name one of his other songs based off that reference to another podcast, and the reason why this review is stuffed full of idiosyncratic references and callbacks to his work is not because it's hard not to hear Unlimited Skull voices and recognize not only emotional kinship as a fellow creator on this platform, but that I could have well been one of those voices in reviewing him, and could well still be, given that he's likely going to see this review, potentially make a video responding to it or reacting to it. Art might be a conversation, but sometimes late at night you want to go to sleep. The conversation becomes a waking nightmare that just won't stop. Might be July now, not October, but I still think we're both tired. In short, this is an album I had to sit with, fully digest, where I'm still not fully certain where it's going to land longer this year, especially if I can't shut out the comparisons to previous albums that the text of this project invites, especially to some of his best work, of which I can't say this fully matches, at least for me. The shorter song length might make sense given the concept and modern expectations. I did wish a few of these fragments could feel a bit more expansive, but it's also damn near close to his best since then, and his albums always grow on me with time. And this sort of metatextual examination of being a modern creator is so thematically rich and deeply personal for me, I can't help but feel that connection. Ironically, it falls into the same territory a lot of his other 2020s work, and that its strongest appeal is very niche to community. It just so happens that I'm closer, or I'm just outright in said community this time more than the others. And it worked in exactly the way it was supposed to for that. So let me put it like this. It's a tough recommendation regardless of how excellent it is, and it is indeed excellent. Because especially if you've tried to create something for yourself from the bare bones, from damn near nothing, it's gonna strike close to home. But hell, sometimes the best thing you can get is a beautiful day in the neighborhood. I would enjoy that. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, subscribe. This was a tough one to sit through. Admittedly, it's excellent. I would struggle to put it among like Hella Personal Film Festival or Dark Comedy or Brick Body Kids Still Daydream for me, but man, it's up there. It's close. It is special. And again, I don't think it's gotten enough discourse, especially among the deluge of phenomenal hip-hop we've gotten this year. Please give this a proper shot. If you have your own interpretations of lyrics and thematic art, please put them down there in the comments below. But beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And if y'all want to get involved in helping get projects onto my schedule, just get involved with yelling at me on my Discord, or hell, support the channel, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships are over here. Don't feel obligated if you can't. Tough times out there, I understand, but the option's available. And again, I have to stress, the next couple of weeks I'm going to be moving, so the video output might get a little bit shaky. It is what it is. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.